it is always hard to describe what it is that I do to people, whether or not I feel like they're in the fiber arts. So I feel like these days I'm just going with entrepreneur because that's easier. But I do, if you want to get technical, I am the owner operator of both Crafty Housewife Yarns and Fiber Arts, as well as My Local Wool. We sort of inherited the My Local Wool website, so it just got sort of adopted into the umbrella of CHY in 2020. And I'm also a Spinolution spinning wheel dealer, so I think our Facebook group, the like not group, like the page, it's Crafty Housewife Yarns and Spinolution Wheels. So basically, all of those things are all, an e-commerce, education, and sort of online fiber arts community is what I run. So if you come up with a good way to explain that, let me know. Because I'm always struggling with that one, whether it's like my husband's work friends or people online.
Yeah, I struggle with that too. Like to explain to someone, I design knitting patterns and I have a growing membership.
And they're like, "What's
What's
that?"
that? What's that? What does that mean? So this is one of my favorite parts of the membership is that I get to bring in some of um, different businesses out there, not the big huge ones. I want you to know, the smaller, not the big box type stuff. I want you to know the real people that are part of the fiber industry that make it, the wonderful community that it is. So I have some questions for you, and then we'll see if anyone that joins us has any questions as we talk, and I'll share those on our screen. So what is your Yarnie origin story? How did you learn? I don't think you crochet, if I'm correct. I think you
I crochet
knit.
just enough to get in trouble. Heidi is always trying to help me with crocheting, and I can make like flat squares, but that's about as good as I am at crocheting.
And so how did you get started with in the yarn world with knitting and spinning? Who taught you?
That's a good question. I always loved yarn, and when I was in college at College of Charleston, there were at the time, sadly, I don't think there are any more now. There were a couple good yarn shops within walking distance of like downtown, and one of my roommates happened to knit, so I randomly learned how to knit in college because I went to the yarn store with her. So I always joke that it was more of a yarn obsession that then I had to come up with something to do with the yarn. And so I had to have something to justify buying the yarn because I had like no money. And so I would buy the yarn, and she taught me to knit. And most people, when they start knitting, from what I'm told, are tight knitters, and they knit really, really tight. I was the opposite. I was a loose knitter, and then I had these like crazy cheap like metal needles and like the really cheap acrylic yarn that's super slippy. And that's one of my I think my videos on my YouTube channel is like beginner knitter tips, and I'm like, don't do that if you're a loose knitter. So I kept knitting, and it just kept getting like bigger and bigger and became like this weird trapezoid because I was like increasing without meaning to increase, and I was terrible. So but I loved it, so I started knitting in college. And then, I kind of, as most of us do, graduated, and knitting got kind of put down, even though it was something. I worked in a fine art gallery, which means spending a lot of time by yourself in a gallery waiting on people to come in. So I also always enjoyed knitting as something to kind of take in my purse to places, to keep me busy and out of trouble, I guess. So I knitted on and off for years through college and after graduation, and then kind of got away from it until, because we moved and whatever. And we moved from, we're from South Carolina, my husband and I, and we moved out to Washington State, the eastern part of the state. And we lived out there for about 7 years. We had our two daughters out there. And I'd pretty much, in trying to get into, trying to do something with myself when we moved, gotten out of knitting until I had my first daughter and I was pregnant. And I was miserable pregnant lady both times. So I got into knitting again because I was like trapped on the couch feeling terrible and trying not to barf. So, and then after I had the baby, you're stuck with a baby sitting on you. So then that was something else that I could do I'm not very good at sitting still, so that gave me something to focus on, and so that got me back into that. I was in a great knitting group that I just randomly happened into, that were a group of friends that welcomed me in Washington State, and I missed them a bunch because I haven't been in a knitting group before or since. And I learned so much from them. Like, I learned how to make sweaters, and a couple of them had spinning wheels. And like I said, in Washington State, this was out. There were just more stores and stuff like that. I'd just never been around spinning wheels, so I had no clue that that was something that like anybody besides Rumpelstiltskin got to do. Like, the only ones I ever saw were like the big great wheels, and so I had zero concept of like modern spinning wheels, like, at all. And so then when I saw some of those that my friends had we used to get together for like a Stitch and Bitch thing on like Thursdays, and I was just like, well, I gotta have one of these. And so then my dad bought me a spinning wheel when I was pregnant again with my second daughter. And I was once again miserable and not sleeping. And so I was up being a crazy person at night, not sleeping. And so I just took to spinning yarn instead of sleeping because I was already downstairs. So I just watched lots of Wes Anderson films and messed around with a spinning wheel. And so I'm totally self taught. I mean, I think some of my friends kind of were like, yeah, it's a general idea. And I don't know. It's funny to me. I have a YouTube channel for teaching people to spin, but like the idea of looking up anything on YouTube, totally, I don't know why I didn't do that. So, like, I wish I had some sort of, like, I found this great YouTuber and it changed my life. I totally didn't. I just kind of messed around with it until I figured it out, and my friends at my knitting group, helped me refine what I was doing. But, and then the rest is history, I guess, as they say.
Yeah, I've never spun because my house is small and I don't have space for more hobbies. I'm not allowed more hobbies. But I am self-taught. I Someone taught me like basically how to like single crochet in the back loop only, and the idea was my idea, not a good idea, was I was going to make like a giant blanket out of just single crochet in the back loop only. Go back, like I had visions of like a king size blanket out of that, and so then I learned more stitches.
So you
And
started with crochet.
I started with crochet and I crocheted for a long time. And I started knitting when I had my kids. And I loved that, I thought it was such a special thing, which it is. You're taking sticks and strings and making
Yeah,
something,
it's
but
like witchcraft.
I liked the look of knitted fabric, of stockinette stitch. That seemed so special to me.
Hmm.
And I wanted to make my kids sweaters and hats and all things. P.S. I haven't really made them very many things. I make them a couple of hats, every so often when their heads get bigger as they grow. But I've done mostly for, gifts for other people. So I have a half-started sweater for my son. We'll see how that goes.
My kids just steal stuff I make for me, so I've given up making them things. Like, I just make like patterns and stuff for what I want to make, and they usually just steal them, so they wear all my hats and scarves and whatever. So it works.